Hey guys, so I want to talk about an issue that I've seen mentioned frequently here on YouTube, that I've been seeing plenty of videos about, but the funny thing is, I haven't seen anybody really talk about it from this perspective. They talk about how people will apply to these jobs that say they're hiring, but not get hired. So, how are all these companies saying that they're hiring and that they're desperate for work, but they're not hiring anybody? I've heard all kinds of theories and conspiracies, anywhere ranging from illegal immigrants to they're collecting all this data from these applications and selling them, to companies trying to meet some kind of a quota to prove that they're making an effort to hire people. I've heard all these different theories floating around for some time now, and I'd like to share with you what's probably the real reason why this is happening. But before I can get to that, I gotta tell you guys a story. Now, for the sake of myself, I'm not gonna list any of the places that I've worked at. Not doing that, because the last thing I need is some kind of, I don't know, like a lawsuit or some crazy shit like that. So I'm just gonna tell you guys a story. I'm a very curious person. I'm a critical thinker. I like to pick apart things. I like to know the details because I believe knowledge is power. And more importantly, the more information you know, the more of an informed decision that you can make, especially in reference to the context of situations and the circumstances that you face. I've been working since high school. So I've been working since I was like 16 or 17, somewhere in there. And times have definitely changed, both in terms of the economy and the nature and how these employers treat the employees. So, before I continue, I would like to say I do acknowledge that the times are hard. Hell, they're hard for me too. And I'm not saying that for sure all of these reasons are all BS and that there's only one correct answer. I'm just going to tell you my experience. Not to mention, I've never worked within an ATS company, so I don't actually know what they do with that information in terms of after applicants have been hired or rejected. I know there's data mining, and I know that there's data brokers out there. So, with that all in mind, let me tell you the story. One day I walked into one of these jobs. Not gonna say which one, but I noticed that there was a whole bunch of applications up for a position. Now, the thing that behooved me was last time I had checked, my manager at that time had said that we were not hiring. So I was puzzled. I was like, why are we putting up these applications? Like we got people calling asking about the status of applications, and we're having to tell them, hey, like, we are not hiring. So to see this stuff on my manager's computer, I was like, what's really going on? So I asked them. I was like, hey boss, like, what's going on? I thought you said we aren't hiring. What's all of this? Now, when they looked at me, they didn't get like aggressive or nothing like that. They could tell I was just genuinely curious. So they explained it to me like this. They said you have A-level employees, you have B-level employees, you have C-level employees. A-level employees are like hard workers. They usually have aspirations in life. A job like this is a stepping stone to like their career. You know, they're planning on moving to higher up positions or ultimately going to different companies to higher up positions. In the long term, they're really good in layman's term, they're really good employees. They're really smart, they're critical thinkers. But due to all that, they're probably not staying with the company long term. They're probably going to be there for like maybe a year or two, and then they're going to bounce. B-level employees, they do more than average, like they're above average, but they're probably not going anywhere too quickly. They're probably going to be there, like 4 or 5 years. They don't do too much. They're not overachievers, but they also aren't going to push themselves past their limits. They're going to do enough that they're good, but not too much, if that makes sense. They're like in the middle. And then you have C-level employees. C-level employees are the kind of people who are probably going to be there for a long time. Because, they got bills. It's hard to find another job. Without going into all the details of what they explained to me, basically in layman's terms, these are like people who are desperate. Their circumstances basically make them stay for way longer than most people normally would. Just because they need the money. But that also means that the employer can easily take advantage of them. This is what I heard. Now, they didn't explain it necessarily like that, but when I was reading in between the lines, that's the feeling I was getting. So with that in mind, I was like, okay, what does this have to do with any of this? Well, basically, they explained to me that even though we are not hiring right now, anytime any of these kind of employees quit, leave, graduate, basically they'll have a whole backlog, a whole back catalog of people who've already applied that they can pull from. Excuse me. And I was like, so we're not hiring right now. Do you know when this position will open? And they basically said no. The whole point of putting up that for hiring position online was just collecting applications so that when somebody did quit, like let's say an A-level employee quits because they're not going to settle for this shit anymore, or a C-level employee gets fired, or a B-level employee finds a new opportunity that pays them more. Well, whenever that happens, and mind you, they didn't explain to me how long these applications stay in the system for. Every company has its own ATS system that it uses to screen applicants for who's going to be the most recommended and who's going to be the least recommended. It puts these applications in order. And obviously, whoever's the best recommended is going to be at the top of the list. So you might be thinking, why the heck did I say C-level employees is what they're looking for? Sorry, I had to drink some soda there for a second. Well, the thing about C-level employees, since they are average, there's room to grow and develop them into a B-level employee, a long-term B-level employee. You can't really convince an A-level employee to settle, but you can take a B-level employee and convince them to stay longer. You can take a C-level employee, grow them into a B, and convince them to stay longer. You can also further take advantage of a C-level employee way more than you could an A-level employee or B-level employee, because they have to have their schedule open. They need the hours. They're desperate. They'll keep their schedule butt cheeks wide open. Can't spread them cheeks further apart. They'll take the shitty hours. They'll work doubles. They'll come in when you need to cover a call in, or somebody who called off, or somebody who quit. So the ATS system puts A-level employees at the top of the list. A-level, not employees, A-level most recommended applications at the top. It puts B-level applicants, somewhere in the middle, and it puts C-level applicants at the bottom. Well, what happens is when the position actually comes up, whether that's in a week, a month, several months, maybe even a year later, what they'll do is they'll call the first people who are up on that ATS list. And then, when all those people who either already have jobs because, they're showing up at the top at most of these ATS systems for most of these companies, when those people answer the phone and say, "Oh no, I already have a job," or "Oh no, I'm not interested because that pay is trash," or "Oh no, I refuse to work shitty hours," then they move on to the B-level applicants. The B-level applicants is probably the lowest on that list. Well, I won't say they're the lowest. They're in the middle, but they're a mixed bag. Some of those people will be nitpicky. Some of those people won't be as nitpicky. So they're going to be looking for people who fit exactly what they want. If they want somebody to work the graveyard shift, most B-level applicants, unless they're night owls and they're Gucci with that, are probably going to get screened out just through the phone calls alone or the interviews. But the B-level applicants, remember, they're in the middle. They're not overachievers, but they're above average. They have a luxury of being a little more picky about accepting job offers. If they get no's from all of those people, then it goes down to C-level employees. Or not employees, C-level applicants. Those people are probably either not recommended or they're just so low on the list. But because they've gotten so many no's from the most prime candidates, they're now at the lower level of the list. And those C-level applicants, because they are so desperate, the first ones that come up on that list are going to get that call and they're going to say yes because they need the money. They're going to say, yeah, I'll take the shitty pay. I'll take the graveyard shift. I'll take the 14-hour stretches. I'll take the 2-week-long straight working days, 14 hours for 2 weeks straight. I'll take anything. And those are the people, if they get through with the interviews, that they'll end up probably hiring if they weren't able to obtain somebody who was an A-level applicant or a B-level applicant. Now, I'm not saying every company does this, but I have a sneaky suspicion that this is what's happening. Because there's been times where I'll be working. I've worked at a job. I've applied to jobs for, let's say, 2, 3, 4 weeks. Excuse me. And I have a system. I will literally put down the days that I applied, and then every 2 days call and be like, hey, can I check the status of my application? Hey, I'm just contacting to see, did you guys want to interview me? You know, I'm spending time every other, if not every other day, every 2 days. So I remember this one time I had did this for like 2 weeks. I had applied to over 25 different jobs. Now, at that time, I needed the money because of rent. And also, I was going to college. So, to be frank, I was almost willing to take anything as long as it paid, at least at that time, this was some years ago, at least $12 an hour or $11 an hour. Because I did the math. I was like, okay, if I work this many hours at this pay, I can afford my rent. That was my only thing. Like, I needed to be able to afford rent. There's no point in my mind of working a job where I cannot pay my bills. Especially at that time, because I was a college student. I was working and going to college, which that's how most people do it. You know, not everybody gets to be a trust fund baby. So I needed a job that would work with my hours. I would get enough hours, and I would get the right hourly pay to cover my rent. So anyhow, I called all these different jobs. I think I landed like 4 interviews. 2 of the job interviews, I basically got hired on the spot, but I turned them down because I was like, $8 an hour is not doable. And most importantly, where I was going to college, if I tried to transfer from those 2 jobs to the same companies where I was going to be going to college at for my sophomore year, I was like, I'm not going to have transportation. It was basically I had circumstances to consider. So I turned those 2 jobs down. Got a 3rd job interview, got hired on the spot, and it was paying like $11.50 an hour. I was like, I can do that. And bonus, where I was going to college at, it was going to be like down the street. Well, not quite down the street, like within 2 or 3 miles of where I lived. So even though I didn't have a car, even though I didn't have a license, I could at least walk or catch the bus or possibly cheaply Uber to if need be. Well, I worked that job for I stayed at that job for like a little over 3 years. But within my first 6 months of working at that job, the job that I actually wanted out of that list of 25 jobs called me and said I was hired. And I was like, yo, literally, I called you motherfuckers. I called you multiple times. And y'all kept saying y'all had to wait on HR. And y'all had to wait on the company and the higher ups. And I just had no real answers. So I had stopped calling them. And when I scored this other job, within like 4 days of applying to it, I was like, yo, I'm just going to take that job. So I basically had to turn them down and be like, hey, I already got a job. I'm not going to be going over there. And I wondered, I was like, why would these people call like this far into me being several months into a job and be like, "Oh, we're ready to hire you." Like I don't have a criminal record. My history's clean as a whistle. My references were really good references. So it's not like the background check was taken years to do. There was nothing to find. So when this manager of mine at this other job explained all this to me, it clicked. So there's a chance that a good chunk of these applications that are out there, or these jobs that are out there, are really just, I won't call them ghost listings per se, but these employers know what the state of the economy is right now. They're aware. And they know that the people that they have working for them are probably, only holding on by a thread. Which ultimately means that instead of choosing to invest in those people or give them a break, they're really just planning for when these people quit or leave or get burnt out. And their backup plan is to just have this listing up so that when that happens, they have a whole hundreds, maybe even thousands of applications lined up of other hungry, desperate people who are willing to take the shittiest jobs imaginable. So that way they keep, they always have a backup plan. Personally, even if you have a shitty job right now, just hold on to it. Because these employers are playing games. I'm not, personally, when at that time that manager of mine told me this, it disgusted me. Because that means not only are you guys not taking care of your employees, you're playing games with people who are already so desperate in an economy like this. And giving them false hope. Because there isn't an exact date for when the next employee is going to burn out. Or the next person's going to quit. Or the next person's going to call in one too many times and be qualified under HR to be fired. Now, the sad part is, I don't honestly think that there's a way to tell between listings that are real for places that are hiring right now. Places that are real, that are hiring right now, versus places that have these, I'm gonna call them ghost listings up, that are just collecting up future applicants who can be called at the drop of a hat when the next person quits. It's really ass backwards what the world has become. I can't necessarily downplay any of the other conspiracies or potential reasons on why this is happening. I'm not going to comment on all those. I will say, at the bare minimum, I've never worked for an ATS company. And again, I do know that there's data brokers out there, but I don't know if those two parties necessarily shake hands and sell the information. I'm not going to comment on immigration. I will say the thing about them meeting some kind of a quota does sound stupid to me, though, because these employers don't even give a fuck about their employees. Half of them don't even want to pay their taxes. I doubt they're trying to follow some kind of quota game. But just think about that. How many times have you personally applied to multiple jobs, gotten a job, and then 6-7 months into that job get called by another place that you had applied to months prior and being told that you'll be hired, or that they want to interview, or that they want to interview you? for you to be like, I already got a job. I feel like that's probably the most logical reason for why a lot of people right now are not getting hired, because the economy is such ass right now that most, I'll say, rational people are just trying to stick out at whatever shitty jobs they're at right now, which means the turnover rate is not high enough for all the people who want jobs to have positions open up for them to fill said jobs. The other thing is, a lot of these employers are cutting hours and are straight up laying off people. So they're trying to keep and maintain productivity levels. Let's say it takes 100 people to have like a 200% productivity level. These employers are literally trying to keep that same level of productivity, but with 30 or 40 employees instead of the full 100, which means more people are burning out. They're cutting costs everywhere. So just keep that in mind. My best piece of advice to try to counteract this, wherever you're looking to apply to, actually show up in person before you apply and ask some of the employees that currently work there if they're actually hiring at that location. Chances are you're probably going to be told they're either not hiring at that location, or they're going to be able to tell you potentially what locations may be hiring. A regular employee is probably not going to know much about the other locations that are hiring, but it doesn't hurt to ask questions. And if you manage to get a hold of a manager to talk to, they might be aware of potential openings as well. I'm not saying go harass people. I'm just saying stay curious and keep asking questions. You never know when one little bit of information could change the whole trajectory of your experience in trying to find another job. But that is all I have to say on this. If you're struggling out there, I wish you the best of luck. Just keep holding on. Peace out.